Welcome to Unit 10, Section 2, the House of Representatives. So here's a nice picture of our House of Representatives. Remember, this isn't all of them, this is only a portion of them. There are today, I believe, 435 members of the House of Representatives, 100 senators, which means 535 total congressmen and women, and then 3 representatives from Washington, D.C. So if you look here, this is a lot of different members of the House here on the steps of D.C. here, okay, of the Capitol building. So in this one, we're going to be talking about the House specifically, not really so much the Senate. Our objectives are as followed. What requirements must a person have to run and be elected in the House? Objective 2, what is a single-member district? And then objective 3, what is gerrymandering? So those are our objectives specifically. You'll remember that our focus question is going to stay the same, which is how should these representatives be representing their constituents? Should they be politico? Should they be, trustee, delegate, partisan, whatever it is? Which way should they be representing them? Okay, so first and foremost, look at this map of different states that have the different members of the House. Okay, here's good old Idaho. We have 2, right? California has 53. And this is all based on population. So you can see very easily which the most populated states are. New York, 27, California, 53, Texas, 36, Florida, 27, right? Then you can see the smallest ones with just 1, some of 2. And what's really kind of cool, guys, is recently, this does change. As states get bigger or smaller, people can gain or lose members of their House. Now, it doesn't happen a ton. What I mean by that is you don't see, if it did, every time we had something happen, it's not like if one person moves into a new state, there's a new, so it's not super frequent, is what I'm trying to say here, okay? But recently, California just lost 1 member of their House of Representatives, and it got apportioned to somebody else. And I don't know who got it. It wasn't Idaho, but we will probably be sooner than later getting a member of the House of Representatives, another one, because we're gaining so many people, right? And as states lose population and other states gain, that total amount of members of the House changes, okay? So again, yes, there are 435 members of the House of Representatives, okay? Now, you might say, like, how do we know that number? Can it be bigger or smaller? Yes, it can. It doesn't have to be 435. The Constitution is silent on this. It doesn't say anything about how many there can and cannot be. Instead, it allows that to be done at the state level, or not state level, I'm sorry, at the House level. So the Speaker of the House and the House themselves vote if there should be more or less based on, how many people there are. Okay. The Constitution does say, and it provides that seats be apportioned or distributed among the states based on their populations. So in the House of Representatives, it's completely based on population. The bigger and more population you have, the more, obviously, the more members of the House you're going to have. Okay. So as you look at this, that makes a lot of sense. Who has the most say? California, New York. And the argument being is they should, because they have more people living there. Poor little Idaho doesn't have much of a say, but for heaven's sakes, there's only 2 million of us, so it doesn't impact us as nearly as much as it does in California. So representatives are elected every 2 years. Now this might seem, 2 years might seem like a long time. It's not. It's incredibly fast, especially in politics. And when you're talking about 2 years, you're really talking about 1 year of just doing stuff, and the next year you're already re-campaigning to get elected again. That's really kind of how it works, and it's representatives, things move very fast in the House of Representatives. Very, very fast, okay? The short term means that the next election is always around the corner. This makes representatives very close to the people at home. Meaning, if you screw up, if one of our members of the House, like Mike Simpson, if he really does something to piss off Idahoans, he's not going to be in the House very long. So this is why they're always trying to make people in their states happy. There's no constitutional limit on the number of terms any member may serve. Now, again, a term is 2 years, but they can serve as many terms as they want. That's why we've had people like Joe Biden, now our president, who's served 40 plus years in government. And you got Nancy Pelosi, who's literally served, I think, in the House of Representatives longer than I've been alive. So you've got a lot of different people who've served for incredibly long periods of times. It is unconstitutional for states to limit the number of terms their members of Congress may serve. Now, so what that means is a state may decide it does no longer wants a person to be a member of the House, but it can't stop them. It can't say, you've served 10 terms, you can't serve anymore. Can't do that. But it can, the people in the state can vote them out and keep voting for other people every single time, right? So some other qualifications, the Constitution does provide that representatives must be three things: 25 years of age, a U.S. citizen for at least 7 years, and they must reside in the representative state in which they are going to represent, okay? So, a question I got here for you: can a person born and raised in North Korea who later moves to the U.S. and is naturalized, becoming a U.S. citizen, become a U.S. citizen for at least 7 years, run for a House seat? The answer: yes, they can. If they're 25, they've been a naturalized citizen for 7 years, and if they are residing in the state in which they want to represent, they can do that. Okay? 435 houses, we've already said, they get reapportioned or redistributed every 10 years. Why every 10 years? Because that's when the census comes out. The census looks and sees how many people live where, and it assigns total numbers to each state, right? So that's how that works. If a state gains or loses its citizens, it may gain or lose members of the House of Representatives. Each of the 435 House seats is divided into districts. The average person represents an average of over 700,000 people. Some a lot less than others, right? So some places it's a lot less than 700,000 people, but on average, that's about what it is, okay? Elections of representatives in the House are held every Tuesday following the first Monday in November of each even-numbered year. That makes sense, right? The national branch of government gets to set that up, not the states. So if you give the month, day, and year of our next election of the representatives of the House, right? It won't be this year. This is 2021, so it'll be next year, 2022, in November. That first Tuesday after the first Monday. Okay. Here was the Republicans' last Speaker of the House. It was Paul Ryan. He no longer is the Speaker of the House. One, because the Republicans don't have power anymore in the House, and two, because he kind of fell out of favor with Republicans. Okay, so right now Nancy Pelosi is the Democrat. She is the Speaker of the House, and she has been actually since 2003. So she's been now that doesn't mean in Congress. She's been the Speaker of the House since 2003. She's been Speaker of the House since I think before mid 1980s, like 1985 or something like that. Okay. So this is not true anymore as far as like 247 seats. This was what was happening under Donald Trump. Okay, it no longer is. Now it's flipped. You've got, I think, 250 something seats, 200 maybe 60 something seats in the Democrats. So there's also what's called single member districts. These are voters in each district that elect one of the state representatives from among a field of candidates running for a seat in that district. So Idaho has 2 districts, okay? And that makes sense because we have 2 members of the House, right? In the past, Congress gave states the option of electing its members by a general ticket system at large elections where the whole state would vote, or having a single member district basis. Congress scrapped the general ticket system in 1842, so now everybody does a single member district. So it used to be like, right, everybody just had this huge convention where everybody would come and vote. Now it's just on the ballot like any other thing at your voting station in your district. So I can't vote for district, I think we're district 2, so I can't vote for district 1's member of their House. I can't vote yay or nay for them. I can only vote for my district's member of the House. Once Congress tells each state how many House seats are available or how many each state gets, the state legislatures themselves draw out the boundaries for the electoral district. This is where a lot of people accuse gerrymandering of happening. So especially where the new census has come out, there's a lot of states who are jumping at the bit wanting to make sure that they can get their district boundaries drawn. Well, why? Well, because everybody wants to have their district boundaries known. So there's nothing wrong with that. But some people are saying it's because they're trying to gerrymander. Idaho has been accused of that by the state Democrats all the time, that they purposely draw boundaries to keep the Democrats quieter more than what they are. Okay, so gerrymandering, this is the idea of drawing up electoral districts with the goal of maximizing the number of seats held by the party that controls the state legislature. So in the state of Idaho, Republicans, they're trying to have the bigger voice, and they're trying to really silence the Democrats by either putting their districts at such little levels or such ski-wampus geographical lines that none of them really have much of a say or much of an opinion, right? So if I have a lot of Democrats, let's say in Boise, they might drop the district lines in a way that makes it so that Boise is split in a lot of weird ways, making it so Democrats don't have a majority say. So here's examples of gerrymandering. So for evenly matched districts, right, A, B, C, D, all the districts produce an even voting ratio for each party. If we redraw that, though, look at how I redraw the boundaries, right? I can now have 1, 2, 3 districts that are of one party, party 2, and one district of party 1. So I could do that too, right? So this is examples of gerrymandering where they try to do it. And people get accused of this all the time for not just political parties, not just Democrats and Republicans, but sometimes race. Sometimes race is brought into the idea of, they're going to have, white people in certain areas and black people in another, and try to isolate or keep black people quiet. Other people say that's not really what's going on there. There's other explanations, but this is a real problem in more state government than it is national. It's really not an issue at the national level, but the state levels do it, and it does cause national issues. So if you look here, another example here, right? You got red, blue, 50 precincts, 60% blue, 40% red. If I redraw that, look at that, 5 districts, 5 blue, 0 red. Because all I had to do was split it up into these sections so that way I could have a majority of blue in each one. Or I could do this, I could have 5 districts, 3 red, 2 blue. Okay, red wins. So what I'm trying to show you here is, even if you look at this, where there should be just generally a sizable blue over red, I can make it so either blue wins, or I can even take it and make it so red wins in most of the districts there, right? So this is how gerrymandering works, and this is when you see really weird ski-wampus lines like this. That's a pretty good sign that there has been some gerrymandering going on. Here is an actual gerrymandering that you can see. Okay, I want to show you guys some kind of weird lines that they have here. Okay, so look at it. Democrats control 2003. Republicans control in 2013. So look at how Tennessee changed. So there's a lot of different ways that we can say how this is. You can say, like, look at how these lines are drawn this way, splitting up a political party possibly, right? It's weird lines like this. However, if we look at the Republicans, we kind of get the same thing. We have these weird kind of shoots out and little like pockets like this where it comes in, trying to take over parts of it or whatever, trying to maximize the amount of votes for an area. And some people say this gets so bad that it literally, like, you would never think that people at the state level would know streets and the political opinions of people on certain streets. But it gets to the point where they're like, they'll be like, oh, in Idaho Falls, down First Street, you have to be really careful because that side of the street is this way and this side of the street is this way. They start learning these things to really make sure they can get their voices out. So congressional districts must have substantially equal populations. You can't. They've tried to do things to get rid of gerrymandering, and one of the ways is they say you have to have really equal populations. You can't have little population here and more population here. You can't gerrymander based on the race, just purely on race. That's unconstitutional, actually. Okay, based on the 14th Amendment and the 15th Amendment. And the Supreme Court has stated that nothing in the Constitution prevents a state from drawing district lines to give it an advantage. They've made the decision that gerrymandering is actually constitutional. You just can't do it based on race. So, there's not even that much hiding about gerrymandering sometimes because, well, who cares? Because the Supreme Court said it really is allowed in the Constitution because the Constitution really just says nothing about it. So, there's lots of different examples here. We're going to pass this and just move on, but like we can talk about women and minorities and all sorts of other groups like that get picked that way. Now here's section 3, the Senate. Okay, you don't have to have this section done right now, so you can pause that and wait until later, or you can just keep going on. So section 3, the Senate. Whose views should Congress represent when they vote? That's the same focus question that we've always had. Objective 1, why is the Senate the size that it is? Why isn't it much larger like the House? Objective 2, what are the positives and negatives of a smaller Senate? And objective 3, what are the formal and informal qualifications of becoming a senator? So first and foremost, let's talk about the size of the Senate. Constitution says that the Senate shall be composed of 2 senators from each state. So there doesn't have to be just 100, but because there are 50 states, there has to be 100 now because there are that many. If we took on another state, right, we'd have to add 2 more senators. We'd have, instead of 100, 102. If we got rid of a state, we'd have to have, 98 instead of 100. Washington, D.C. is continuously argued for statehood. A lot of people in D.C. want D.C. to be an actual state instead of just a district. And if that happened, they'd be allowed to have 2 senators. Okay, so that's what the Constitution says. Okay, framers, they wanted the Senate to not be nearly as close to the public. Remember, the House of Representatives is elected every 2 years. They're always questioning what the people want, and they're trying to make sure that they give the people what they want. The House, and so the House is very close to that. Now, the Senate is not nearly as much, and we're going to go into how in a little bit, okay? Originally, they were elected by state legislatures. So instead of us voting for members of the Senate, it was done by the state legislatures. Okay, that was an important thing. We changed that in the 17th. I think I said 16th earlier. 16th Amendment, I think, is income tax. The 17th Amendment is we made that elected by the people. Now, the framers would probably not have been super excited to have seen that. They would have definitely questioned it. And the idea being is now you've made the group, the Senate, who's supposed to be away from the people, to supposed to be a little less democratic, and you just made them super democratic because you just tied them to that. Senators serve in 6-year terms instead of 2. So that means that a senator can do a lot more stuff in the time. They're not worried about re-election all the time, right? Again, this is a less democratic system. Members of the House are always worried about what the people's image is of them because they're going to be elected in just another year. In the Senate, it's every 6 years, so they're not nearly as worried about that because they've got time, right? So many terms is, and they can have as many terms as they want as well. Those terms are just based on 6-year terms. They're a continuous body, meaning they're staggered for every third. Every third of them are re-elected every 2 years. So a third of the member of the House, we should say, is up for re-election the same time that the House is. Does that make sense? So next year, in 2022, in November, we'll be electing the House of Representatives and 1/3 of the Senate. The reason they do that is you can't have completely everybody up for redoing, congressional things every 6 years. You can't have that happen, right? This allows them to get more experience, more time, okay? They represent a larger group of people because there's less of them, right? So in Idaho, where we have 2 members of the House and 2 senators, it doesn't seem like that maybe, but in California, where they have 53 members of the House, they only have 2 senators to represent. So whatever California's population is, let's say that it's 50 million people, it's split directly in half. One person represents 25 million, the other person represents the other 25 million. Here are the qualifications to be a member of the Senate. You have to be 30 years of age, you have to be a citizen for 9 years of that time, and you have to inhabit the state in which you are representing. Why the difference? Well, because the House, remember how I told you it moves fast? You're elected every 2 years, you're 25 years of age, you're always, right? It's supposed to be kind of, very quick. People just really move in and trying to get things done as fast as they can. The Senate is a check on them. It's supposed to be slower, a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit more reflective. And you can totally see that. The House tries to pump out as many bills and laws as humanly possible, where the Senate is much, much slower in that. And our founders' fathers would have liked that. They would have thought of that as being a good thing, because if the government's not making laws for you and me, then it's staying out of our lives. And that's what they really would have liked. There are some informal qualifications as well, like being part of a specific party, like Republican or Democrat. Name familiarity, right? Here we have Mitch McConnell, Harry Reid, 2 very famous members of the Senate at different times. Gender, right? For a long time, being a man, a white man specifically, was a little bit more helpful. That's changing all the time. Your ethnic characteristics, like your ethnicity, if you're Arab or if you are African American or Hispanic, it might be a little bit harder. Again, those are changing. The cool thing is that's changing all the time. We're having more and more of these people from different ethnicities that are becoming members and senators all the time. And your political experience. Generally, you don't just start being a senator without first of doing something else in government. The reason being is you need to have more experience. Again, Senate is more considered wise, a little bit slower, a little bit more reflective. Okay, and that's the end of section 3, so make sure you guys have the objectives answered there. Why is the Senate the size it is? Because the Constitution says that it should be 2 per each state. On objective 2, what are the positives and negatives of a smaller Senate? The positives are that you have, it's much slower. It doesn't get things done as fast. The negatives are that it is much smaller, so you have a lot of things to do and not a lot of time to do it in. Objective 3, what are the informal and formal qualifications? You got to be 30. You have to live within the state that you're in there for 9 years, or be a citizen for 9 years and live in the state that you're at. Okay, so there's that. So section 4, members of Congress. We're going to be talking about here just general stuff about Congress in general. Okay, what are different types of representation are there? We've already talked about that to some degree. What are the different jobs that congressmen have, and what are some of the benefits of being a congressional member? So, personal political backgrounds. If you want to have the job as a member of Congress, you're going to be doing what's called legislating or making laws. You're going to be doing the job of representing people. You're going to be doing a job of committing or being in committees where you have to meet on specific tasks like foreign relations or the economy or things like that. You are a servant of the constituents. They work for us 100%. And you are a politician. You are supposed to make people happy. That's the job of being a member of Congress. If you don't like it, you probably shouldn't do it. Representatives of the people have a couple different ways that they can do it. We've already talked about this, so we're just going to move past this. They can be a delegate, agent for the people, trustee, a person who does it based on what they think, their own conscience, partisan, who does it based on their political party, or a political who tries to combine all three. The background of being a member of Congress is, first, you're going to have something happen where you're in a committee. So for instance, I think Jim Risch, one of our representatives, he's a senator, is on the Foreign Intelligence Committee. So he deals with a lot of other countries and the intelligence we have on them and that they have on us. So he might meet on a committee. The committee will be a group of Democrats and Republicans to try to make sure it gets done there. And right now there's a committee on the infrastructure bill that Joe Biden's talking about. Republicans and Democrats are arguing in committee trying to get things done so that way it has a better chance of passing on the floor. So there's the proposal of the bill. It's when it goes and it's proposed in just general. It's just a bill. Then there's what's called floor consideration. It's when the bill moves from committee to the actual floor for everybody to kind of look at and consider. There's the oversight function. This is when Congress checks the executive to make sure that it can be carried out and that they will be able to do what they need to do. Meaning, it's okay to pass a law, but now the executive, the president, he has to enforce that. And so what do we have to do in order, like for instance, DACA? If we make DACA the Dreamers Act, which is about helping kids who came here illegally very early on, well, that sounds great, right? You can make that law, but how are you going to enforce it now? One example of this is, Barack Obama passed Congress passed some orders that were about detaining and separating children from their families, right? And then when it came to President Trump, he had to enforce this thing that was really not very well thought out by either side. And so it caused a lot of problems, right? Still is. And again, you're servants of the people. You're working for your constituents. You're trying to get things done. Examples of this is passports and visas, getting people who want those things done, getting that done for them. The general compensation or salary of a member of Congress is $174,000. So that's about generally what you're going to make. Now, if you're in any kind of a leadership position, you're going to be making more. So, for instance, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, she makes about $223,500. Now, this is not a secret. Anybody can look up any of these salaries anytime they want. They're public officials. They're government officials. So their salaries are open for everyone to see, just like in education. Every one of you can know exactly what I'm getting paid at any moment in time. And any person in the district, you can see what they get paid. You just have to go to the district website. It has the payroll, has everybody's, what they're getting paid monthly. Okay. There's also some non-salary compensation, meaning there's some things that perks they get that are not paid directly to them, but they get them. For instance, fringe benefits. They get special deductions on their taxes. Because they're doing so much for government all the time, they get and things that they're paying for all the time, they can count these deductions on their taxes. There's what's called the franking privilege. This is where you can ship anything that you need to for free. It doesn't matter. So they don't have to pay for any shipping. Okay. Now, who determines how much they get paid? Actually, it's kind of funny. They do. they get to determine if they want to have more money or not. So that might seem like, what the crap, that's so stupid. There's no way, that's not fair. But here's the check on that. While the members of the House and the Senate get to pick their own pay, once they've done, let's say that they're like, okay, let's raise it to $180,000, we want a pay increase. They can do that, but then it only goes into effect the next session of Congress, which means that if they really do something extravagant or crazy, the American people can get super pissed, and they can actually they can unvote for those people, right? So they can't, like, it might seem like, well, they could just keep raising their salary, but they can't, because if they did, they'd make enough Americans mad that they wouldn't be able to keep the pay at which they are. Okay, and so that's the end of all of our sections for all of our notes here. And here's our objectives. Remember, you make sure you have them all. What are the different types of representation that there are? Politico, there's delegate, trustee, and partisan, right? You have to do what are the different jobs that a congressman can have, right? Legislative, representative, committee member, servants of the Constitution, politicians. And what are some of the benefits that congressmen get? They get paid generally, right, $174,000 or more. They have these non-compensation or non-salary compensation things as well. So these are the different benefits that they get. And that is the end of all the sections for Unit 10. Okay? Thanks, guys.